Nation, on May 29th, citizens of Alberta, Canada go to the polls to elect a new provincial government. Well, truthfully, they're probably re-electing the same government they already have, another in a long string of right-wing governments that have run this one-party state in a nearly unbroken chain since 1935. I say nearly unbroken because after cratering the provincial economy with disastrous oil-centric policies for decades, a perfect storm of crises put the Alberta New Democratic Party in power for 4 brief years. And in that brief time, Rachel Notley and the NDP managed to right the ship through intelligent and measured policy changes that are still benefiting Albertans. Unfortunately, the payoff didn't come early enough for the NDP to get re-elected. But then, no one ever accused Albertans of being good long-term planners, so the race is a close one. The incumbent party is called the United Conservative Party, or UCP, an amalgam of the center-right Progressive Conservative Party and the lunatic extremist from the Wild Rose Party and Alberta First movement. Alberta First. Yeah. Any party or movement whose name is a place, followed by the word first, is never a good thing. And while every right-wing party in the world has always had their fascist element, previous to Donald Trump, they just kept their mouths shut and tried not to call too much attention to themselves. But now they act like they're the Messiah. Literally. Anyway, the UCP is led by Danielle Smith, a former movie extra and media personality, sans personality, who decided that yapping about dumb ideas wasn't sufficiently vapid enough. She wanted to implement them. When she was first elected leader of the UCP, she automatically became premier of the province. As we've said before, premiers are like state governors, but if the states were run by the majority party leader in the legislature, as Canada does not have an executive branch, meaning we elect people who don't have scapegoats in other branches to blame for missteps, and we get things done because of it. This election will unfortunately be determined by the 29 seats of the city of Calgary. You might remember Calgary for the Winter Olympics or the annual Stampede exhibition, or you might remember Calgary as the birthplace of both Ted Cruz and Canada's Ted Cruz, Pierre Poilievre. I remember Calgary as too much moolah and a lot of pretend hee-haw. So letting the dime store cowboys in that town decide the fate of the province is a bit like Sweeney Todd working at Papa John's. You quickly wonder if the red stuff you're spreading on the dough is in fact still pizza sauce. Sorry, not sorry. Anyway, just in case there are some intelligent Calgarians watching this show, and we doubt that, we thought we'd share some of Danielle Smith's greatest policy hits. It's not a complete list. We don't have all day. She wrote an article claiming smoking cigarettes can reduce the risk of disease. Yeah, she stated that Alberta pays more taxes than they get, which, since taxes are paid by individuals according to their earnings regardless of where they live, is not how the federal transfer system works. She recently said pregnant women in Lethbridge, a city 2.5 hours drive from Calgary, should head to Calgary if they go into labor. We're not sure at what speed she hoped they drive that, though. She currently denies ever saying Albertans should pay a fee for visiting their doctor, despite having repeatedly suggested paying $10 or $20 a visit would not be a bad thing. She has promoted the idea of a separate Alberta pension plan, something that she would control, despite the Canada pension plan being an internationally recognized example of how best to run a pension system. She has promoted ivermectin as a COVID cure and said hydroxychloroquine cures 100% of coronavirus patients within 6 days of treatment. Well, if death is a cure, I suppose. She once stated that cancer was preventable and completely within your control until the disease reached stage 4. She apparently tried to interfere with the criminal investigation of participants in the Coutts, Alberta border blockade that were in possession of high-capacity bullet magazines, ammunition, body armor, and assault rifles. She also tried to get charges dropped against people who violated public health orders during a global pandemic that killed not less than 5,720 Albertans. That's 1,219 per million people. Almost America death rates. And if you think that's bad, she has promoted the idea of replacing the RCMP with an Alberta Provincial police force that would be under her control. Hers. And she said the unvaccinated were the most discriminated group she's seen in her lifetime. Most discriminated. She's also committed $330 million in public funds to help a billionaire buy a hockey arena. And at a time when the healthcare system was struggling to provide basic services due to systemic underfunding, Danielle Smith chose to spend a $2.4 billion oil surplus on electricity rebates in the 6 months ahead of an election. Initially, we called Danielle Smith Canada's Liz Truss, but that's an unfair comparison because Liz didn't stick around long enough to rack up a comparable list of stupid ideas, and unlike Liz, Danielle's curtsy doesn't kill monarchs. So yeah, we didn't think she'd last this long, but that's on us. We've pointed out that most right-wing politicians are two-shoe cockroaches, and we occasionally forget that they manage to overstay their welcome. So Calgary, it's unfortunately up to you to save Alberta, or you can re-elect this meatball Ron government and flush Alberta down the toilet like it was Florida. God help us. And now this.
Bartender, Jesus, not again, oh boy, oh dear!